Have you stopped at any point this week and felt that the silence was strangely loud? As if the world around you kept moving, talking, screaming, but inside you, something had stopped to listen to a frequency that no one else can hear. You feel that something is changing within you, but you cannot put into words what it is. You look at people you have known for years and have that strange sensation that you no longer belong to that place, to that conversation, to that version of you that used to fit so well. And perhaps you are here now because a part of you already suspects the answer. What if none of this is a problem? What if none of this is a symptom of depression, of fatigue, of a bad phase? What if everything you are feeling is, in fact, the clearest and oldest sign that you are beginning to awaken? Dolores Cannon spent 4.5 decades of her life investigating exactly this phenomenon. Decades of sessions, thousands of people, reports that repeated themselves from different cities, different countries, different languages. And what she discovered was so consistent, so impossible to ignore, that it changed forever the way millions of people understand who they really are. There are signs, specific identifiable signs, that appear when a soul begins to remember its own origin. And today, in the next few minutes, you will hear the 7 main ones, not to believe in anything blindly, but to recognize in yourself that which you have always known and had no name for. Before anything else, it is important for you to understand who this woman was, because Dolores Cannon was not a guru. She was not a mystical figure who grew up in a temple in Tibet. She was the wife of an American military man, a mother of 4, a housewife, living an absolutely ordinary life in a small town in the United States, until the day everything changed. It was 1968. She and her husband began studying hypnosis out of curiosity, almost as a hobby. And in an apparently ordinary session, an ordinary patient, also a housewife, began to say things she could not possibly know. Precise historical details, languages she had never studied, memories of lives that were not her own. Dolores could have closed the notebook, ended the session and returned to her normal life, but she did not do that. She opened the door, and from then on, she would spend the next 45 years documenting what was on the other side. That is how the technique that would become known worldwide as QHHT, Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, was born. A form of hypnosis so deep that it allowed access to levels of consciousness that seemed impossible. And in these sessions, repeatedly, year after year, the same material emerged: past lives in verifiable detail, memories of existences in other dimensions, spiritual information about the soul's purpose, answers to questions that humanity has carried for millennia. And what began to become absolutely clear to Dolores was a truth that she herself took years to accept. We are infinitely more than this small identity we carry on our documents. We are more than the name, more than the profession, more than the family history. We are consciousness. And that consciousness is remembering. But what is perhaps most impactful about all her work is that this awakening is not an individual thing. It is not something that happens to you alone inside your room. Dolores observed, in thousands of sessions spread around the world, a message that was repeated in almost the same words by people who had never met. The Earth is going through a profound transformation. Human consciousness is changing frequency, and millions of souls are waking up at the same time, in waves, in synchronized moments, as if a cosmic clock had struck and each of them began to move. It is not just the world that is changing. You are changing along with it. You are part of the world that is changing. And here is where the story begins to get personal. Because Dolores identified 3 great waves of volunteer souls who came to Earth at exactly this historical moment. The first wave was born mainly between the 40s and 50s. These are people who have felt their whole lives that strange sensation of not belonging, that deep nostalgia for a place they cannot name, as if they missed a home that no one around them understands. These souls came to pave the way, to be the first, to endure the initial impact. The second wave was born between the 60s and 70s. They are the healers, the artists, the teachers, the spiritual seekers. They came to radiate consciousness, to build bridges, to hold the vibration in environments where almost no one else could. And the third wave, perhaps the most delicate, was born from the 80s onwards. They are children and young people with an almost uncomfortably sharp intuition, a sensitivity that the old world called a disorder. an instinctive rejection of systems that make no sense. They came to build a completely new way of living. And if you are hearing this now, it is very likely that you are part of one of these waves. Perhaps you already know. Perhaps you are just beginning to suspect. And this is where the signs begin. Because the awakening does not arrive through an announcement. It arrives through clues, through subtle signs that the body, the mind, and the soul begin to transmit. And the first one is perhaps the strangest of all. You begin to hear a frequency that no one around you hears. It could be a high-pitched ringing inside the ear that comes from nowhere and goes away. It could be an internal vibration, as if something were pulsing in a layer beneath the skin. It could be a sensation of pressure on the forehead, in specific points of the body, with no apparent physical cause. Traditional medicine finds nothing. You go to the doctor, run tests, and everything is fine. And it is not by chance. According to the material from Dolores's sessions, this can be increased energetic sensitivity. Your perception is sharpening. Your attention begins to pick up deeper realities, more subtle frequencies, layers of experience that previously went unnoticed. You are not going crazy. You are beginning to listen. The second sign is perhaps the most talked about, and at the same time the most denied in common conversations. Time is accelerating. You wake up on Monday, blink twice, and it is already Friday. Months seem like weeks. Years seem to disappear between your fingers without you having properly registered what happened. It is not aging. It is not the rush. It is not a lack of organization. It is a change in the way your consciousness processes the passage of time. You are beginning to experience the present in a different way. You are beginning to realize that what they called time was never linear as we were taught. And as your consciousness expands, your chronological experience contracts. More and more people report exactly this, and earlier in life. And it is here exactly at this point that we need to pause for a moment. Because if you are recognizing these signs in yourself, if you are feeling this different vibration, this time running, this sensitivity increasing, there is a question that may have already crossed your mind more than once. Why then does my material life remain exactly the same? Why do I vibrate differently, feel differently, perceive differently? And my bank account has been in the same place for years. And here is one of the most uncomfortable truths of spiritual awakening. You may have been manifesting for years. You may be reading books, listening to channels, repeating affirmations, giving thanks in the morning and at night, and still remain in the same financial position. And do you know why? Because the problem was never the universe. The universe is responding perfectly. The problem is your field, an energetic field that is full of holes, punctured by old beliefs, unconscious contracts, scarcity programs that come from before you were born, cannot hold prosperity even when it arrives. And that is exactly why the prosperity magnet exists. It is not just another manual. It is not just another pretty theory for you to hear, agree with, and forget. It is a protocol designed to reprogram your magnetic field in 28 days. 28 days to close the holes where abundance is leaking without you noticing. 28 days to align your internal frequency with the external frequency you want to attract. You have been manifesting for years and remain in the same bank account. The problem is not the universe, it is your punctured field. The prosperity magnet reprograms this in 28 days, or you admit it was just an excuse. The link is there, in the description, pinned in the comments. Those who need to understand, understood. Let's move on. Because the third sign that Dolores identified is precisely about this in a different way. The old world begins to lose its flavor. Those things that once seemed so important lose their weight. The approval of others stops dominating you. Status ceases to excite you. Appearances begin to seem tiring. Comparisons on social media start to sound almost ridiculous, and in their place, other things begin to occupy space. Purpose, truth, inner peace, authenticity. You are not becoming a cold person. You are becoming a filtered person. You are letting go of everything that no longer matches the frequency you are building, and this, naturally, generates estrangement from the people around you, because they continue to play the old game, and you are stopping wanting to play. The fourth sign is the direct consequence of this. You begin to feel different from other people, not in an arrogant sense of superiority, in the genuine sense of not fitting in. You are at a table, in a meeting, at a family lunch, and you have the clear sensation of being on the outside even while being on the inside. You hear the conversations and they seem distant, as if they were in another language. You want to talk about what is really happening inside you, and you realize that there is no one there ready to listen. And this loneliness hurts. Dolores made a point of saying this repeatedly. Your difference is not a defect. Your sensitivity is not fragility. You are not broken. You are tuned to another station, and it is normal not to be able to talk to those who are still on another frequency. This will pass. Those who need to arrive will arrive. The fifth sign is one of the most beautiful experiences of the process. Synchronicities begin to multiply. You look at the clock and it is 22:22. You open your phone and the app shows 11:11. You are thinking about a person you haven't seen in 10 years, and they call. You have a specific doubt, not knowing what to do, and a book falls off the shelf opened exactly to the answer. It is not a coincidence. It is not a racing mind. It is not apophenia, as skeptics like to call it. It is life beginning to speak to you in a more direct language. When you pay attention, when you lower the mental noise, the universe begins to communicate in a way that was previously ignored. Synchronicities do not increase. Your perception of them increases. And this is one of the clearest marks that something is awakening. The sixth sign comes as a call that is almost incomprehensible to those around you. You begin to feel an inexplicable attraction to ancient wisdom, Egypt, pre-Diluvian civilizations, forgotten mythologies, hermetic symbology, alchemy, mysteries of consciousness. You open a book about a culture from 5,000 years ago and feel something stir inside your chest that feels familiar. You watch a documentary about the pyramids and have an absurd urge to cry without knowing why. You are not becoming eccentric. You are responding to an ancient call. Your soul is recognizing information it has seen before. States of consciousness, spiritual knowledge, ways of living that were being practiced long before you were born in this life. This interest is not casual. It is memory. It is the part of you that remembers beginning to pull the rest in the same direction. And the seventh sign is perhaps the most transformative of all. You begin to question everything. You no longer accept superficial explanations. You no longer swallow imposed narratives. You do not accept truth because someone in a tie said it on television. You begin to suspect everything that was handed to you ready-made. Religious beliefs that you inherited without questioning, definitions of success that were imposed, models of life that no one asked if they made sense to you. And from this questioning, something precious is born. Discernment is born. Independent thought is born. The search for your personal truth is born, the one that no one can give you as a gift, the one that can only be discovered from the inside out. This sign is powerful because it is the beginning of sovereignty, the beginning of the moment when you stop delegating your existence and begin to take ownership of it. And it is at this point that the real question appears. The question that was hidden behind all the others. Why are you here? And this question appeared with impressive frequency in Dolores's sessions. Ordinary people, in deep states of hypnosis, saying the same thing in different words. Each soul carries a unique contribution. Each presence influences the environment around it in a way that it cannot measure itself. Your existence here, at this moment in Earth's history, is not casual. You were not born to fit in, you were born to add. And what you add, no one else can add in exactly the same way. Your presence matters much more than you imagine. It matters in ways that you will only understand much later. But Dolores made a point of making one thing absolutely clear, and this is important because many people misunderstand it. The purpose of those who awaken is not to save the world. It is not to convince everyone to awaken along with you. It is not to force those around you to see what you see. Whoever tries to save everyone usually loses themselves. The true purpose is simpler and more difficult at the same time. Live with authenticity. Maintain your peace. Express your truth. When you do this, when you simply are, without performing, without explaining yourself, without apologizing, you begin to emit a frequency. And that frequency touches those who need to be touched. You ignite those who are ready to ignite, in each one's own time. It is not your job to wake anyone up. It is your job to keep yourself awake. And that is how what Dolores called the new earth is built. It is not an apocalyptic prophecy. It is not an event marked on the calendar. It is a change in consciousness, a different way of perceiving reality. And she explained that there are two paths always available at every instant. The path of fear, which manifests as limitation, separation, conflict, mistrust, closing off. And the path of expansion, which manifests as love, understanding, connection, openness, trust. It is not a choice you make once. It is a choice you make hundreds of times a day, in every thought, in every reaction, in every word. And here is the key that many people lose sight of. The reality you experience is deeply related to your internal state, not the other way around. First comes the internal state, then comes the reality that confirms this state. And that is why there is what Dolores called the point of no return. There is a moment on the path of awakening in which you cross an invisible line, and after this line, you can no longer go back to being who you were. Old things stop fitting. Old people stop making sense. The masks you wore begin to become too heavy to be sustained. You try to return to the old life, and it seems small. You try to resume old conversations, and they seem hollow. It is not arrogance. It is vibrational incompatibility. Once you remember who you are, pretending becomes impossible. And this is one of the most delicate parts of the process, because it is scary. It is scary to let go of what was familiar, even when the familiar was suffocating you. It is scary to build the new without being sure of what it will look like. But there is no way back, and deep down, you already know this. For those who are at this moment, there are some simple practices that Dolores recommended. They are not complicated techniques. They are reminders of the obvious. First, connect with yourself every day. Breathe deeply. Listen to the silence. Observe your thoughts without becoming a hostage to them. Second, ask for guidance, ask internal questions, and stay in silence to listen for the answer. Intuition does not speak loudly. It whispers. Third, avoid judgment, especially of those who are not yet where you are. Each person has their own rhythm. Each soul has its own schedule. What seems like a delay to you is the right time for them. Fourth, speak with authenticity. Stop molding your speech to please. Speak your truth, even if it shakes. And fifth, trust the process. Accept uncertainty. Allow the transformation to happen without you needing to control every step of it. These 5 gestures repeated daily change everything. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all of Dolores Cannon's work, after 45 years of investigating what exists behind the veil, lies in a single sentence. You did not come here to become someone different. You came here to remember who you have always been. The search does not end out there. No guru, no book, no master, no channel will hand you your answer on a silver platter. Because the answer is not outside. The answer begins inside. Everything you are doing, everything you are learning, everything that is resonating now, is just remembrance. It is just the unlocking of something that was kept in you since before you had a name, and perhaps this is exactly what needs to go through you at this instant. You were never lost. You were just forgotten. You were never disconnected. You just weren't paying attention to the connection. You were never alone. You just couldn't hear the other sides of the conversation. Everything that is happening now, this strangeness, this sensitivity, this strange hunger for something you don't know how to name, is a part of you returning home. Perhaps you are not becoming someone new. Perhaps you are simply remembering who you have been all this time, beneath all the layers that the world placed on top. So trust what you are feeling. Trust the discomfort. Trust the restlessness. Trust everything that stopped making sense. Listen to your intuition, even when it contradicts all the logic around you. Allow this process to continue even when it is uncomfortable. You are not doing anything wrong. You are doing the oldest and most sacred thing a soul can do. You are remembering. And if this resonated with you in any way, if at any moment in this conversation you felt that good tightness in your chest, that silent recognition, leave a comment down below writing the phrase, "I remember who I am." Not for show, but as a marking. As a stamp of presence at the moment you decided to stop pretending. Awakening does not consist of becoming something different. It consists of recalling the truth that your soul has always known.